Ladies and gentlemen, it is just about that time. Football season is nearly here, and we are all over it right here on Fox Sports The Gambler. My name is Sean Barnard, as always, here with my guy Sam Oshtry, and a little bit different for Picks and Roll. We're doing a full-scale football episode today and ready to dive into some expectations for the NFL season. So before we hit the ground running here, Sam Oshtry, how we doing? You hyped up for football season to finally be here?
I am. As much as I want to talk about Michael Porter Jr. and what he's
Yeah.
been up to in the NBA offseason,
Interesting offseason, yeah.
to say the least. I mean, he gets off a championship contender. He can do whatever he wants. But not that he wasn't always like this. I'm excited for football season, though. It's time to just go full football, and that's what we're doing. We're going to do our division picks. I was in Tennessee last week, road tripping through Tennessee, Gatlinburg, Chattanooga, stopped in Knoxville. That's why I'm rocking this Vols hat right here, and then finished up a couple days in Nashville. So I'm on practically no sleep the last 5 days. But I'm ready for football season. My summer travels are pretty much done. So let's go.
Wow, look at that. Sam Oshtry grinding through it, wearing his heart in his sleeve for a performance on the podcast today.
For you and this show, anything.
I love it. I love it. I will say I do think Michael Porter Jr. may become the first NBA player to have a no podcast contract in his podcast clause in his contract. There has done himself no favors.
What about Nelk streams? Can he do Nelk streams if he doesn't do podcasts?
Yeah, I'm. If I was the Brooklyn Nets PR, I would probably say, Michael Porter Jr., just go away rest of the summer. Don't open your mouth. Don't talk to anybody. Don't be on camera. Just go exist anywhere else. I think that would probably make life a lot easier for all parties involved. But nonetheless,
hey, we all have vices, Sean. We all have vices.
Yeah, sure, yes. As Michael Porter Jr. so poetically put himself there. But we'll get it back to football right here for today. How are we feeling? It feels like there's kind of a lot in the NFL world still swirling behind the scenes. We got an Eagles trading for John Mechie. We got Trey Hendrickson. The rumor is heating up for him, still not agreeing to a deal with the Cincinnati Bengals there. Some storylines around the league, but anything jumps out at you. I first want to lead with the Mechie trade there. The Eagles bringing in another wide receiver, Howie Roseman at his best. What were your thoughts on that deal going down? And do you have any sort of expectations for him making an impact?
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles have so many draft assets. You kind of expected them to add depth with those, and they're going to continue to make trades because they're not going to. I think they had 13 picks before yesterday's trade in next year's draft. They're not going to finish the season or by next year's draft with more than 10 picks. I mean, they're going to use those drafts to build depth and build future assets that they can also flip because that's what Howie Roseman does. I like the John Mechie trade because it just gives wide receiver depth. I mean, we got really lucky with a healthy A.J. Brown and Smitty for most of the season. And Jahan Dotson ended up being a pretty good wide receiver 3. But you can't always bank on that health. I mean, there's times where Smitty had a concussion, obviously, late in the season. A.J. Brown's hamstring has constantly been an issue the last few seasons. So not that it's kept him out serious time, but you can't always bank on those guys being really healthy. And Jahan Dotson can probably step up and be wide receiver 2 for stretches if he has to be. But now you really didn't have any depth behind those guys. And so now you bring in John Mechie, who's a solid player. I mean, he can be a productive player as a wide receiver 3. So I like the depth that they brought. Johnny Wilson even as the backup tight end, because Dallas Goedert's probably going to miss some time. So Johnny Wilson as a backup tight end, I think, is one of the better backup tight ends in the league. I think he's a brilliant pass catcher. So now you just have depth to the pass catcher position, and I think that's really important. So I like the trade a lot.
Yeah, I think sometimes the trades that pay the biggest dividends are the ones that you're getting something out of nothing. And I do think that there is a chance that this could become this. Mechie to me jumped out as a guy that struck me as a change of scenery type of guy. He obviously has some familiarity. He's an Alabama guy, played with Devontae Smith, played with Jalen Hurts. So there is a bit of a relationship established there. And I do think that Texans wide receiver room was incredibly crowded when we talk about the Nico Collins of the world, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs that were all there last year. And he dealt with some stuff himself, from injuries, some really serious health issues that derailed him for a extended period of time there. So I'm happy that he gets a fresh start. I think Philadelphia is as intriguing of a place as could possibly be the case with those relationships in mind there. And I also wonder if there's maybe a bit more to the injury side of things with the wide receiver room already than we do know. We've heard sort of some whispers or sort of some vague reports about A.J. Brown dealing with something. Who knows what the case may be, but Howie Roseman never sleeps, man. I love that he's willing and dealing. I love that he's making some moves there. And the new corner they got showing some promise in preseason as well. Have you been tapped into any sort of preseason football, Sam Oshtry?
Following a little bit, it actually was on the screen. When we were in Nashville on Saturday. It was a noon kick, I believe, and we had it on the screen for a little bit. before heading downtown. Like following it for sure on Twitter. I'm not a guy who's going to sit there and watch every preseason game. I hate these people who, like, when the Hall of Fame game comes around and they're like, football is back. It's back. It's like, no, football is not back. You're going to watch a quarter of a preseason game, and then you're not going to watch fourth string guys compete for the job. Football is back when the Eagles and Cowboys kick off, and even this coming week when week 0 and meaningful college football games come around. That's when football is back. You don't have to act like you're a bigger football fan than everyone else because you're saying football is back when preseason football is on. Preseason football is useless for the starters and really anybody except for the people trying to compete for roster spots. Right. And that's how teams kind of use cut it down to the 53-man rosters based on these preseason action. But it means nothing for the upcoming season or for meaningful players. So I follow it for sure. Obviously, Jahad Campbell gets a huge sack. That's awesome. That's something to get exciting about. But I'm not sitting there locking in on every preseason snap.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you there. I did tune in and watch from start to finish the Eagles preseason game this week here. I got to say, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, man, I'm not sure if we've ever seen a quarterback this bad get as many opportunities to be a starter as has been the case in his career already there. I'm not going to read too much into things. I agree.
Well, I thought it was interesting they didn't really play Tanner McKee that much. Like that's because they don't really play their meaningful players during preseason at all. And they might be considering Tanner McKee a meaningful player because we know how much Eagles, specifically Howie Roseman, has always valued the backup quarterback position. And Tanner McKee clearly is going to be a really good backup in this league. And he's, based on last 2 seasons, the backup quarterback for this team is going to play meaningful football. So it's kind of interesting how they didn't play him that much and are seemingly valuing that spot.
Yeah, fair point there. I do think he's like the clear-cut QB2 in a way that I wasn't sure would be cemented the case. Obviously, Kyle McCord in the mix as well. Dorian Thompson-Robinson trying to make his case there. And by the way, I missed the days where we used to get like a couple series of the starters actually playing. There's none of that anymore. It is straight up just guys competing for roster spots.
I don't miss those days. Why risk injury? Even in the Eagles' first preseason game, Joe Burrow played the whole first quarter. I'm like,
yeah.
And the Bengals starting offensive unit played the whole first quarter. I'm like, what are you doing? Imagine if a guy gets injured in that setting. It's just irresponsible to me. And I like the Eagles' approach to just keep your starters on the bench. They don't need preseason action.
Well, when you've missed back-to-back playoffs, like our boy Joe Burrow, Mr. Universally viewed as a top 5 quarterback, has, maybe you need a little some time.
Wasn't exactly the offense's fault, though. Wasn't exactly the offense's fault.
Sure. Well, let's get into this playoff discussion and talk about which these teams will be carving out an opportunity this year. So me and Sam are going to go division by division, talking through things, giving our picks for which team will ultimately earn the divisional title, get a chance at the playoffs, and everything else in between there. So let's keep it right here at home in Philadelphia and talk some NFC East. Dive into the odds from DraftKings Sportsbook here. No surprise that your defending champion Super Bowl Eagles, the favorites to win the NFC East at -135. The Washington Commanders follow that up at +220. Dallas Cowboys at +550. And the New York Giants at +2200 there. We know the trends about there not being repeat champions in the NFC East. Will this year be different, Sam Oshtry?
I think so. It's really one of the weirdest trends in football when you think about it, that there hasn't been a repeat divisional winner in the NFC East since 2003, 2004 when the Eagles did it. Yes. But I think that's over 20 years at this point, and I think now the Eagles are going to do it again, and almost by default. I mean, we know the Eagles are bringing back pretty much their entire offense, and the Landon Dickerson injury is bigger to me than I think people are discussing because he was listed by week to week, but it was very vague language with what his injury really is and the timetable. So I think we're going to get a scenario where a few weeks go by, and this is going to be more month to month than week by week. And I hope that's not the case. But I do think, and Landon Dickerson is obviously a warrior and he'll play through anything if he can, but sometimes you can't. And I think that's a pretty big loss to this offensive line unit. And then does the running game suffer a little bit? Do they have to pass the ball more, which maybe that's why they need more wide receiver depth and making some of those trades. So there's a lot of dominoes with that Landon Dickerson injury. But again, this is by default because when you go through the rest of the division, we don't have to talk about the Giants. We know what the Giants are. Even though I think Jackson Dart's going to get a lot of reps after they lose a few games, Russell Wilson will start. And it's
quick interjection here. Giants fans, relax. The Jackson Dart love is coming out strong.
He's played well. He's played well in the preseason for sure.
He has, but we just prefaced this for how little preseason matters as he carving up third stringers here. I've seen some extreme Jackson Dart takes in a way that it's just deep breaths for now would be my message.
and even if Jackson Dart's a really good quarterback, the roster is awful. So it doesn't even if he has a good quarterback by rookies quarterback standards, the Giants aren't competing in this division. So it's not even worth really discussing them. And then you just look at the drama around the NFC East, and there's nothing that exists in Philadelphia. Philadelphia coming off Super Bowl is just sitting there laughing around these other teams with the Terry McLaurin situation in Washington, with the Micah Parsons situation in Dallas. Let's start with the Commanders. And we've discussed this before, but I'm expecting serious regression from Jaden Daniels. And I think Jaden Daniels is going to be an awesome quarterback. But what I always say is there's why you see sophomore slumps happen is when the rest of the league has a full offseason to scout a rookie quarterback, not just a week to week when this guy's coming onto the scene. There's a lot of times teams, and especially teams in the division, can find and expose weaknesses where they couldn't during someone's rookie season. So that's why you often see a sophomore slump like CJ Stroud, who's considered a top 10 quarterback. And now, after a sophomore year, when he really struggled and dealt with some wide receiver injuries, no one considers him top 10 quarterback. I think you could see something very similar from Jaden Daniels, where I think he's going to be an awesome quarterback because of the talent. But sophomore season, I think you're going to see some regression. And thus, I don't think the Commanders are going to they'll compete for a playoff spot, for a wild card spot. I don't think they're going to make this leap like everyone's expecting. And then you look at the Cowboys. The Cowboys will be way better than they were last year. But again, the Micah Parsons situation. Do we really trust Dak Prescott? So I think it's a tough division. It's not some cakewalk for the Eagles by default. And just the drama from all these other teams, the Eagles are by far the best roster. And the last point I'll make about the Eagles is their defense. Everyone kind of is worried about their defense might take a step back this year because they're relying on a lot of young players. Their defense was great last season because of the offense. Like, people forget that. It was the lowest scoring defense in the NFL, but that was because the offense led the NFL in time of possession. When they just killed clock and had all these long drives with their running game and their great offensive line and Saquon and Jalen Hurts running behind those guys, their defense got such great rest and were barely on the field that they were able to produce stops and have a low scoring output. So it was really their offense, to me, and I talked about this all last year, that led to their defense being great, because the personnel was good, but I never thought it was great. So I expect something similar to happen because the offense is completely returned. Even though the defense personnel is younger and may not be as experienced, and so they might take a step back in that way, I still think the defense is going to be just fine.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. I will say it did feel like there were quite a few times where it was one play handed off to Saquon Barkley, and all of a sudden the defense is right back out there.
That's true.
But you are right that it was a ground and pound offense overall, that they certainly gave them fair rest there, and the defense delivered. We saw guys like Zach Bond step up. A ton of guys took some really exciting step forwards. Both Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell exceeding whatever sky-high expectations that you could have had from them. Some pretty ridiculous rookie seasons there. If the Eagles do not repeat as NFC East champions this year, it simply is just not meant to happen in this division. I do agree with pretty much every point you brought up. To hit on Washington a little deeper, for starters, totally see the Jaden Daniels situation the same way, that you can't ask for a better rookie season than what he had, but I do feel like he's destined to take some level of step back this year, and to be determined how significant that is. Beyond that, I really haven't loved what they did with a lot of the rest of the roster. I don't think Deebo Samuel really still has it in the way that they're going to be counting on him to do this. The Terry McLaurin situation very clearly could have been avoided. They traded for Laramie Tunsil, who I think is a good player, but it felt like not really in need of theirs and a little bit of an overpay in my mind. And then paid Javon Kinlaw like an insane amount of money for a dude that, in my mind, is just a guy, that he's a fine football player. It felt like they went all in on a bunch of guys that really weren't worth the price of admission there, that they a strong price point and strong payment for guys that I don't think at the end of the day are going to make that much of a difference on their team. So yes, Jaden Daniels is exciting. The Terry McLaurin situation is interesting. What would your prediction be there, that he ultimately ends up agreeing to a contract, suiting up there? How do you see this playing out?
I think so. I think he'll end up agreeing to a contract around the ballpark where he wants. I hate to compare it to bring back the NBA, but it kind of reminds me of Jonathan Kuminga's situation a little bit, where he thinks his value is much greater than it is. And the Commanders are kind of playing hardball, and eventually they'll find a middle ground. Like Jonathan Kuminga, based on some of these reports, thinks he's a much, much better player than everyone else in the NBA views him as, and thinks he deserves money like Scotty Barnes and people like that are getting, when he's not those caliber of talents. So I think he'll realize that and have to come to an agreement with something less. And same thing with Terry McLaurin. Like, I think he's going to get paid for sure, but he obviously thinks his value is greater than it is. But the Commanders need him, and Jaden Daniels need him. And so it's kind of interesting now that we're a couple weeks away from the season and still hasn't been worked out. I do think when deadlines come, that's when negotiations start heating up. And that deadline is going to be coming around when you actually have to start getting ready for your week one opponent. So I'm much more confident in that situation being settled before the season starts than the Micah Parsons one in Dallas.
Yeah, and just to stick on the Kuminga comparison, where I would differentiate these two is I think the Kuminga, I guess, roadblock here, I put entirely on Jonathan Kuminga directly. This Terry McLaurin situation, I place more of the blame on Washington. That when you have a quarterback on a rookie contract, it is no excuse not to pay one of your top guys who's delivered for the past 7-8 seasons, regardless of who's throwing him the football. This dude has put up 1,000-yard seasons when it's Sam Howell and Taylor Heineke and Case Keenum and whoever else has just rotated through the endless cycle of quarterbacks there. Terry McLaurin has delivered. And for Terry specifically, he had to be like dying to get a quarterback like Jaden Daniels. And all of a sudden, he's got one. He's got a guy. And then they're running into this issue. So I do think Washington just needs to step up, pay him, and get the deal done here. I think Terry McLaurin at times is thrown in a little bit of an upper tier than he might be quite that. But the dude's one of the top 10 wide receivers in the NFL. I do think he is that. He might be on the lower half of it, but that's still a very good guy and very important to this team. So in contrast to Kuminga, I think the Warriors, if he were to up and leave, it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. That yes, you want to control the asset. Yes, you would like to upgrade talent and utilize that roster spot to something to better your team. But if he leaves, it doesn't derail their season in a way that if Terry McLaurin just holds out, Washington is going to feel the effects of that pretty clearly.
I'm with you on that for sure, where Terry McLaurin is way more valuable to the Commanders than Jonathan Kuminga is to the Warriors,
right?
Which is why the Warriors have the right to play a little more hardball than the Commanders do. But still, I still think there's some truth to Terry McLaurin is probably a top 10 receiver, like on the edge there. But I do think he's probably thinks he's worth than what he actually is. And I think that's where this disagreement is coming from. But again, the Commanders should pay him. When you have a guy like that, when you have a quarterback like that, you just pay him. And I think they will end up paying him.
Yeah, and I do think probably some of this negotiation is coming from the standpoint of look at what I've done already, which is always a bit of a dangerous game from an organizational standpoint that, yes, you got to be appreciative of guys, but at the same time, you're paying guys for what they're going to do, not what they have done.
Exactly.
So we'll see ultimately how that plays out. You sound a little bit more skeptical of the Micah Parsons situation there. So Dallas, obviously, the circus is always a big part of the entire offseason, that Jerry Jones just lives for the spotlight being on, Dallas being in the headlines, and boy, have they got that this summer. It feels like the feelings are legitimately hurt here. The situation that essentially played itself out, that Michael Parsons and Jerry Jones had a conversation, just the two of them behind closed doors, that Jerry Jones took as a contract agreement there. Michael Parsons leaving that room saying, nope, talk to my agent here. Let's make this like legitimate. And Jerry Jones still sticking to that. There has not been any sort of momentum towards coming to agree to a deal here. What are your thoughts on the entire situation, and how big of a deal is this for Dallas?
I love Jerry Jones. He's my favorite owner in the entire league. I think he's great at what he does. He should never retire. He should never give his son Stephen Jones full control. I love Jerry Jones. Keep doing you, Jerry Jones. But I will say it's a huge deal because Micah Parsons is one of, if not the best defender in the entire NFL. I mean, he changes the entire complexion of your defense. He's that talented of an edge rusher. So without him on the field, the Cowboys defense is going to seriously suffer. The Cowboys do have the leverage, though, because he's still under contract. I believe it's 2 more seasons. So what's he going to do? Hold out and not play football? One after the season, though, right?
Is it? I'll fact check. I thought it was just this year.
I could be wrong about that. But regardless, what's he going to do? Not play football for a season or two? Like, the Cowboys have the leverage because he's still under contract with them. So I do think he wants out, but I also think, and he was disrespected for sure. I'm sure he feels that way. I also do think there is a workaround where the season starts and he wants to be playing football, and they can find a way and a path for him to actually get on the football field, whether that's a liaison who's on the Cowboys management team or whatever. Maybe it's Stephen Jones. If it's not Jerry, whoever it is, someone other than Jerry to actually sit down and have that conversation with Micah Parsons and make sure that, like, yeah, we did disrespect you, and we acknowledging that, and now we'd like to honor you with all the money that you want, because he deserves every penny of it, and move forward. Because what's he gonna do? Not play football for 2 seasons? So I do think it eventually gets worked out, but I don't think anytime soon. I could definitely see him missing the first couple weeks, maybe the month of the season. Did you get a fact check on that?
Yeah, and he will be unrestricted free agent after this year. So this is the last year of the deal here. But your point still stands that he is under contract here. And I also think it's worth noting, like, that trade request, which is One of the more hilarious and straightforward trade requests that we've ever seen. A bar like, unfortunately, I no longer want to be here, which is just great there. But he signed that directly to Stephen Jones at the bottom, which I did think is worth noting and a little bit interesting there.
Well, I think it's because he will cut off. He's cutting off all communication with Jerry Jones moving
Yeah,
forward. So
yeah.
someone else has to act as a peacemaker if he's ever going to get on the field again for Dallas.
So I'll ask you that question directly. Does Micah Parsons ever get back on the field for the Dallas Cowboys?
I think so, just because of everything I laid out. What's he going to not play football the entire season? The Cowboys shouldn't trade him. I mean, you couldn't even get. Would you even get a historic haul
No.
for a guy who's going to be a free agent after this season, who you couldn't guarantee will still be on your team after next year? Probably not. So it's like I don't think they're actually going to trade him. I think they're going to play hardball here. And what's Michael Parsons do? Miss an entire season in the dead smack middle of his prime? It's hard to see the situation playing out other than him eventually suiting up for the Cowboys sometime this season.
Yeah, I do agree with you that, like, I can't see it because I think the biggest sticking point here is exactly what you just mentioned. You're not going to get eye for eye talent in return for Michael Parsons because of this situation. That everyone in the NFL knows exactly what's going on. And you're also, when trading for this guy, are signing up to pay him a ton of money. That he is going to be going to be a free agent at the end of this year. So you know the deal going into the situation there. It does, at the end of the day, feel like it makes too much sense not for him just to be back with the Cowboys there. He obviously helps them to a massive extent, but I think that team has bigger issues than just beyond Michael Parsons' availability there. Dak Prescott, I don't think it should be forgotten that before he got hurt last year, it already looked bad. That the running game, I don't think is going to be that effective. That yes, it's nice that George Pickens will bring something to that team. That pairing him with CeeDee Lamb will be a nice 1-2 punch there. But I think the Cowboys are ultimately going to be in like that 9-8, 8-9 type of mix. I think that they'll be in the playoff hunt, but I don't think they're a real threat to win the division.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think they'll improve naturally because Dak Prescott will and should be healthy the entire season, and I do think they upgraded behind CeeDee Lamb with George Pickens, and so that offense should be better. But when Dak was great, when Dak was like an MVP candidate, wasn't turning the ball over a lot, it's because he had a great offensive line and a great running game.
Yeah.
That offensive line is not what it was 6-7 years ago, and of course they don't have the running game that they had when Ezekiel Elliott and those guys were behind that offensive line. So I don't think this Cowboys offense, even with a full healthy season of Dak Prescott, will return to one of the best offenses in the league. But I do think they're good enough to be around 500, maybe a little bit above 500 if Dak stays healthy. And I think that'll compete for a wild card spot, but not win this division.
And I'll just throw this out here to put a bow in the NFC East. I think the Giants are going to be more competent than people are giving them credit. I don't think they're a playoff threat. I don't think they're going to win the division or anything like that. But
so that means you're a Jackson Dart believer.
Well, I think Russell Wilson's the starter. That's going to be
for now. So you're Russell Wilson, but I don't think Russell Wilson makes it out of the first month of the season.
Interesting. I think it goes on longer than that. That I do think that they're pretty intent on playing the long game. And by the way, for Brian DeBull specifically at head coach, the longer you keep Jackson Dart in the waiting seat, the longer that you sort of extend your leash. And I do think that he's aware of the.
I disagree with that.
Why is that?
Because I think you have to prove the only goal for Brian Dable this year is to prove that you can develop Jackson Dart and there's potential with him at quarterback. If there's not, if you don't see anything Jackson Dart this year, you're completely starting over and you're completely moving on. Because with Russell Wilson, your max is what, a 6-7 win team? Why would Brian Dable and Joe Shane for that matter, both those guys who are on the hot seat, why would those guys want to extend Russell Wilson's playing time if they're continuing to lose games instead of, let's show John Mara, our owner, that Jackson Dart was the right guy to draft, who we drafted because he's showing flashes. And as the season goes on, and you need at least a few months of this, show that we've developed him throughout the season. That's the only way I think they're keeping their job. If they play the long game, I think they're both done after this year, and they know that.
See, I think it's the exact opposite. And the comparison I'm going to use here is kind of funny because Jared Mayo got fired for the New England Patriots here. But I think the blueprint that New York will follow is sort of what was done with Drake May last year, that they started out the season with Jacoby Brissett. You know who he is as a quarterback, that he's not going to be a guy that ultimately raises your floor and ceiling that much, but he's competent. He can get the job done. That's sort of where Russell Wilson falls at this stage of his career. And I think all that New York needs to tease is this guy can grow into something. If you throw Jackson Dart to the fire and he fails off the bat, that's the end of his head coaching opportunity. Like, I think it boils down to that simple. So you sort of cover your back end there by protecting yourself from that.
Okay, but what's the benefit of playing Russell Wilson beyond the first few weeks of the season. When you look at their schedule, they start with Commanders, Cowboys, Chiefs, Chargers. They could easily start 0-4. At that point, even if Russell Wilson's playing fine, what's the point of him continuing to give him this long leash, even when you have Jackson Dart on your bench? Because then your next game after that is against the Saints. And that's an opportunity for Jackson Dart to come in against one of the worst teams in the league and maybe excel immediately. But you also, at that point, still have 3 months left of the season where you can show serious development. Because I don't think it's throwing him to the fire necessarily. He's not going to start. We know Jackson Dart's not going to start. But it's not throwing him to the fire if it's been so bad and you're losing all these games with Russell Wilson, and then maybe you start winning a little bit or you see some development from Jackson Dart. At that point, it's like we have nothing to lose. So let's show that this guy wasn't just the right draft pick, but also we can develop him.
I think they don't care at all about the results this year from like a wins and losses standpoint. And
I agree, but that's why I'm saying the only thing that matters is Jackson Dart's development and showing that he was the right pick.
Yeah, and I think that can wait until like week 8, week 9, when you're like, this is the make your case for next season is sort of how I see things playing itself out. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they handle it. Darts look good in preseason. There's no doubt about that. I'm not a Jackson Dart guy, period. And I think you can kind of, whether it's week 4 or week 8, the guy is going to be who he is going to be. And I think a lot of times people get that, I guess, a little bit twisted as well. But we'll see what they do. I'm surprised to hear you that optimistic about how early he plays.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to set a line on what week he plays, my line would be 5.5, and I would take the under because I think I could see that week 5 game against the Saints as his debut when they start 0-4. I guess you're taking the over there. I just think that Brian Daboll and they know that their job depends on Jackson Dart's development. And if he does not develop or it doesn't show flashes that he was the guy in the right pick, then they're both those guys are gone. So it's like, why wait? Why wait to see that process play out in the back half of the season? Why not just make that earlier? Because guys will make mistakes as rookies when they get thrown into the fire. But the more time they play and the more reps they get as a starting quarterback, they're bound to show progress. But by week 12 to 17, maybe you're like, okay, this guy shows serious flashes. He's the guy.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll see how it plays out. For what it's worth, if I had to set a line for when Jackson Dart makes his first start, 7.5 would be kind of the number that pops to my head there, and I lean towards the over on that. So we'll see. We might have to create a little friendly wager on when Jackson Dart gets his first action. So let me mull that over a little bit. But let's keep it moving. We stuck in the NFC East a little bit longer than I intended to here. Let's move down to the NFC South with the lone other NFC team with a minus favorite to win the division. That would be the Tampa Bay Bucks at minus 110 on DraftKings Sportsbook. The Atlanta Falcons second in the division at plus 230. Carolina Panthers at plus 425. And the New Orleans Saints, who we mentioned as one of the worst teams at football, at plus 1400 there. Sam Oshtry, how you feeling about the NFC South?
This is probably the toughest division because I believe the Bucks have won it 4 straight years.
Yeah.
But I'm a Michael Penix Jr. guy. I think he's going to be a good player in the NFL. I think he showed flashes when he replaced Kirk Cousins last year. I think he's really talented. He has a lot of experience in college. So those guys, usually when you have a ton of experience in college, you don't have to wait that long for them to make strides as a starter in the NFL. And we saw that with Bo Nix last year in a great situation with a great coach. He had so much college experience and game reps that there wasn't that big of a transition from college to the NFL for him as a rookie. I think Michael Penix Jr. didn't have a full rookie season, but he had played so much in college, and I think he's going to be a really good quarterback in this league. So I think this is the year the Falcons honestly win this. And there's the Bucks defense. They're usually thought of with Todd Bowles as a defensive-oriented group, but their offense was one of the best in the league last year, and their defense was pretty average. I don't think their defense is going to make some serious strides forward, but I do think the Falcons' offense is going to emerge as like a top 10 offense in this league with Michael Penix Jr. So I'm of the mindset that at the price, like I see why the Bucks are the favorite. I wouldn't argue and dispute that, but at the price at plus 230 to get the Falcons, I would take the Falcons.
Yeah, I'm also a Michael Penix Jr. guy, and I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about the defense than Atlanta than you are, that they've very clearly committed to the defensive line this year, taking 2 first-round talents at the defensive end position, including James Pierce Jr., who's got a little bit of off-field concerns, but the talent is certainly there. They also selected Jalen Walker 15th overall and brought in Leonard Floyd on a $10 million free agent deal there. That's a lot of attention paid to one specific part of the field there, and that's clearly something that I think that they're intent on building toward. I like Penix Jr., as I mentioned. Bijan Robinson can take another step forward. I still don't think he's quite had his breakout to what he's going to be at the NBA or at the NFL level there. The receivers are completely fine. Drake London, the more that you dive into the numbers, the more impressive it seemed from last year from him specifically. So I like Atlanta. With all that being said, I still think Tampa Bay gets the job done again. That I think that offense is going to be pretty unreal. Baker Mayfield is going to put up some numbers again this year. They brought in Emeka Egbuka, if I did good enough on the pronunciation there. Obviously, Chris Godwin coming back from the ankle injury. Mike Evans still going to be doing his thing. There is talent on that Tampa Bay roster. They're going to be fun to watch. Baker Mayfield going to absolutely sling the rock. So I still lean Tampa Bay, but I think that we do see Atlanta take some strides forward and be right in that same mix.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion on this division, honestly. Like I said, I see why the Bucks are the favorite, and I love Baker Mayfield, but I'm a huge Michael Penix Jr. fan. So when I trust a guy like that to come in and have an immediate impact because of all the college experience he's had, with like you said, the weapons. I mean, there are really good weapons there, like Bijan Robinson, Drake London, who's a legitimate number one wide receiver, and Bijan Robinson hasn't even been utilized as much as he can be. Like he'll be a huge asset in the passing game too. And you can say whatever you want about Kyle Pitts, but maybe this is the right quarterback for Kyle Pitts finally. As an elite pass catcher,
we're gonna be saying that in like 2080, man.
Yes, you're right. You're probably right.
Yeah,
everyone's still taking him in fantasy.
Yeah, for real. Two more follow-ups about the division before we keep it rolling. Number one, Carolina Panthers. I've been leading the charge a little bit on being a Bryce Young believer here, that I'm bought in, that this is going to be the year he puts it together. I was encouraged by what I saw in the second half of last season, and I refuse to believe that kid that I watched at Alabama could be as bad as he has looked in the NFL to this point. Are you with me on buying some Bryce Young stock, or are you still concerned?
He got benched and he definitely came back and was much better. So maybe that benching was good for him. Like this Panthers offense just isn't that good still. And so it's like he's the guy who needs the necessary weapons and he doesn't really have that. And their offensive line isn't that good. So even when you have Chuba Hubbard back there, it's you can't rely on the running game that much. And when he has to sling the ball a ton, he doesn't have great weapons around him. So I think Bryce Young's a good quarterback, but again, I don't think it's the right situation. When we talk about quarterbacks and where they're drafted, it's all about situation. So I think Bryce Young's a good quarterback and he showed signs of development when he came back from his benching. But again, it's not a good roster and not the right pieces around him. When you're not in a good situation, it doesn't matter how talented you are as a quarterback, you're just not going to be productive. So I don't think the Panthers will be a threat. Maybe better than last year. I think Bryce Young will start the season better than last year. But again, not a threat as far as I'm concerned in the division.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be a threat, but I do think they'll take strides to being a competent football team. I do think Ted McMillan will be a huge addition at the wide receiver spot, and that could be a guy that he's able to rely on at a more regular rate there. I think that this should just be viewed as they need Bryce Young to take a leap forward, even if that does not directly translate to wins and losses. And I'm believing that that's going to happen this year. Now, the final question before we wrap it up in the NFC South, agree or disagree? At this time next year, the New Orleans Saints will be making the first overall pick in the NFL draft.
It's hard to disagree. I think they have the best odds to be drafting number one overall. Yeah, I mean, they have. Hopefully, Kellen Moore still has a job there, but they're an awful roster. They know they're an awful roster. They don't have any quarterback. I mean, not a single starting or even backup caliber quarterback on that roster right now.
Not a single player that has won an NFL game is on their roster at the quarterback position.
Yeah, that says it all. And I don't even know if any of them will win a game this season. So, yeah, I mean, when you look around the NFL and you're like some of the worst teams, like the Browns could be there, but I could see the Browns winning a few more games. The Titans, the Jets. Like, I don't think these teams are going to be as bad as the Saints. So, yeah, I'm with the Saints on that.
Yeah, that's my opinion as well, that I do think that hopefully Arch Manning can turn things around down there in New Orleans. We'll see how it all
that would be a pretty cool destination for him there because, of course, Peyton and Eli and I guess Arch Manning's dad are from New Orleans. So that would be a pretty cool destination if he ends up in New Orleans in the hometown of his parents and his uncle or his dad and his uncle. But I'm not completely convinced Arch Manning is coming out after the season.
Fair point. So. Yeah, we'll see. And New Orleans, maybe we'll see if that is the team that helps or hurts the cause for him making the NFL leap. But nonetheless, we'll keep things rolling. Shift down to the NFC West now. The 49ers are the favorites to win division at plus 150 on DraftKings Sportsbook. The Los Angeles Rams not far behind them at plus 195. Arizona Cardinals plus 425. And then the Seattle Seahawks bringing out the rear at plus 550. A pretty tight race from the odds perspective here. Sam Oshtry, who do you think takes home the NFC West crown?
These divisions are really tough. I think the Rams win it, and I would go with the Rams plus 195. But there are serious injury concerns. I mean, when Matt Stafford and Puka Nacua and everyone is completely healthy, it's one of the best offenses in the entire league. And we talk about how they finished last season with they have an argument as one of the best teams over the last 2-3 months of the season. I mean, they were the only team that gave the Eagles trouble in the last 3 months of the season, regular season or playoffs. And that, again, that was a unique game because it was in the snow, but that team easily could have won a Super Bowl. I mean, that was the team that I was more worried about for the Eagles than anybody, because that if they beat the Eagles, I think that team's winning the Super Bowl. So that offense is so talented when they're completely healthy, but that's a massive if. We know Matt Stafford had a little bit of a back issue. He's back now, but he's also dealt with injuries throughout his career. Those receivers that he's had have dealt with injuries throughout their career. So if they're all healthy, I think it's one of the best offenses in the league, and I would take the Rams to win the division. But again, I think this is a neck-and-neck race between the Rams and the Niners, because I don't see any scenario where Kyle Shanahan has two back-to-back brutal seasons. And that was just injury after injury last year between Christian McCaffrey and Debo and everybody that went down for the Niners last year. This is a season where they're gonna be healthy. And Kyle Shanahan's one of the brilliant offensive masterminds in the NFL, one of the best coaches in the NFL. Guys like that don't have two down seasons with the talent he still has on his roster. So I think this is a year where it's a complete neck-and-neck race. Could come down to the final game, kind of like what we saw with the Packers and Lions, I believe it was last year, or no, excuse me, Lions and Vikings where it came down to that final game. I could see that happening in this division with those two teams, but I would give the slight edge to the Rams. Both will be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm rolling with San Francisco here, and I gotta say, I'm worried about the Rams, man. I think Matt Stafford might be like legit hurt, and back injuries are not anything to mess with. The dude is 37 years old. He has been beat up all across the field for over 15 years to this point. I just kind of worry that Father Time has caught up with Matt Stafford. I still think in any one individual game in a sample size, like he can look like an incredible NFL quarterback. But I think getting through a 17-game grind and a playoff run feels like a tall task at this stage in his career. And the first thing that raised my eyebrows about this was the fact that this offseason, they didn't seem dead set on paying the man. If you feel that way about your quarterback, I think there's probably a reason about it, and nobody's more in touch with his medicals than Los Angeles directly here. So I am very cautious with the outlook for the Rams this year. I do think that this is a chance for injuries to completely derail their season. And on the other side of things here, I think we can chalk up to a lot of last year, purely two injuries for the 49ers. They're still not a bad football team. Brock Purdy honestly impressed me last year, that I thought I learned more about him as a quarterback last year than any of the previous seasons with what he was asked to do within that offense there. And it made me feel better about his overall outlook. So I think it's a bounce back year for the 49ers, and I fear that things could go off the rails in Los Angeles.
I get the injury concerns with Stafford, but he's played at least 15 games in 4 of the last 5 seasons. And the one season that was derailed was 2022, where he only played 9 games. So it's not like he's had nagging injuries here and there, but it's not like this guy has had serious health concerns. And the age is certainly a factor, but we also saw Tom Brady win a Super Bowl when he was 40 plus, and he was healthy in the his late 30s into his 40s. So like Matt Stafford hasn't been this injury-prone guy, and I also think he's been that productive even at this age. So the back thing could be real. Like the back is nothing to mess with, 100%. But if he can get into the season healthy and stay healthy, he's still one of the best players in the league. But you're right, it's a huge if, and all depends on his health, because they have the weapons. And Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams coming in. We know what Kyron Williams is as a back. So they have all the pieces in place. It's just if Matt Stafford can stay healthy, and I'm trusting that he can.
I'm just, my spidey senses are tingling that something is up with Matt Stafford. Like, it's been very weird in how all this has been reported. Like, he's going to practice this day, and then that day gets there, and it's actually, we're pushing it back a week. Nothing to be concerned about, just standard, but we're pushing it back. And then the same thing happens a week later. Like, as of yesterday, there was a report that the Rams PR was made available to the media, not being Sean McVay. And they asked directly, like, did Matt Stafford do his non-contact workout as expected? And the response from the PR team was, no comment on that at this time. Sean McVay will speak to the media Monday. It's like something is weird here with whatever is going on.
I think you're right. There are valid concerns. At the same time, he's not a guy who you need to rush into training camp, or definitely not preseason action. He would never play in that. But he's not a guy you need to rush into training camp. Like, he doesn't necessarily need the reps with that offense. He's been there long enough. He's been there with Sean McVay long enough. Obviously, he's a lot of familiarity with Puka Nacua. He's not a guy I would, if there is even a little bit of concern, At his age, you don't rush him into training camp. So I do think that there are valid concerns that he hasn't suited up. I mean, and it's a back injury, and it's not like a shoulder injury or a finger injury or something. Like a back injury is very serious if it's a real serious injury. But I also don't think you need to rush him back, would be my only counter to what you're saying.
Father Time is undefeated, is all I'll say.
Is it though? Like Tom Brady beat Father Time. I think we can say that. Is it undefeated in football? Like LeBron James beat Father Time. No argument for that one.
I've never heard it put that way. So interesting. But at the end of the day, NFL continues on, NBA continues on, whether or not that those guys are in it or not. That the football world found a new Tom Brady, and his name was Patrick Mahomes for a brief stint of time. We'll see if he continues on that trajectory. But let's finish up with the last NFC division here before we keep on plugging on, and one that I have a bit of an upset pick on. The NFC North, the Detroit Lions are the favorites at plus 160. The Green Bay Packers at plus 250. The Minnesota Vikings plus 300 and Chicago Bears plus 500. The tightest expected divisional race across the entire NFL based on odds here. Sam Oshtry, what's your feelings for the NFC North?
Yeah, I got the Packers. I got the Packers winning this division, and I'm pretty confident about it. And I love Jordan Love, and I think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league this entire season. I think it was really discounted, his week 1 injury that he suffered against the Eagles in Brazil on that awful field in Brazil in week 1 on that Friday night. How impactful that was for the rest of his entire season. Not just because he missed a couple games after that, but he would really never return to full health. And that completely hurt his running game. When you look at the rushing stats from last season in 2023, when he had his best season, he carried the ball 50 times for 247 yards, 4.9 yards a carry. Last year, we still played 15 games, but he was not healthy after he came back from that injury. Only 25 carries for 83 yards. I mean, when his rushing game is hindered like that, it affects the entire Green Bay offense. And it certainly affects him and his dual threat ability. So I think he'll return to that with coming into the season fully healthy, not dealing with all those injuries that he did last season. It's completely going to open up his rushing game. I still think he's a great passer. I love what they did adding Matt Golden, who I think is in the first round as a wide receiver, who I think is going to be an awesome wideout in this league. That's another weapon to surround Jordan Love with. So I think this Packers offense is going to be awesome. And I think the Packers win this division in a really, really tough division. I don't think the Lions are going to suffer as much as everyone else does with those two coordinators, but they're not going to have the season they did last year when I believe they won 14 or 15 games, whatever it was. The Vikings, I don't trust J.J. McCarthy. We've talked about this before, even though Kevin O'Connell is that great of a coach. So I think this is the Packers division to win this year. It's been a while. I don't think they've won the division since Aaron Rodgers left, but this is finally the year they get back on top.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you that the Packers are my pick as well here. I am a believer in the Lions are going to take a step back this year, that I think losing both coordinators is a big deal. And I think Dan Campbell is the type of coach who needs to facilitate a little bit, allow the coordinators to run the show for the offense and defense. And I think him being as hands-on as he's going to be required to be this year, it's going to be a learning experience for everyone involved there. The Vikings, you mentioned, I'm not a J.J. McCarthy guy. I wasn't when he was coming out of college. I think we all sort of forgot about him for a year as he sat on the sideline here. I don't see a world where he can lift this team higher than was the case last year with Sam Darnold. And we also saw Sam Darnold blow up in the postseason here. I haven't loved the tone of guys like Justin Jefferson talking about McCarthy in preseason here. I just don't see the vision for year one, even though Kevin O'Connell makes about as easy as a quarterback system as could possibly be the case. I will note, I think the Chicago Bears take some baby steps forward this year. I don't think they're going to be right in the contending conversation, but I think they'll be a bit more in the mix this season than was the case last year, and that we can finally give Caleb Williams like a fair judgment based on this season.
Actually, I didn't even say anything about the Bears, and I should have. I'm glad you brought them up because I think this is the best division of football because they have 4 teams who are legit playoff contenders. I think it's the only division in football where all 4 teams will be disappointed if they don't make the playoffs. Yeah. And the Bears won't be completely disappointed, but they want to see development from Caleb Williams and him making that jump. But I think this Bears team is going to be good. Like I really trust Caleb Williams, and I think the offense, what they did, shore up the offensive line so he's not running for his life, and their improvements at wideout. I think this Bears team is going to be a legit threat in the division. It's just such a typical division where I don't know if they're going to get necessary wins to actually make the playoffs, but they've certainly been the wild card hunt. So, yeah, this division top to bottom is the best. I just focus on the Packers because that's my team. I think the Packers are a real Super Bowl threat this year with the season I'm expecting from Jordan Love. But yet the Bears are right there, the Lions are right there, and the Vikings I could see actually being the worst team. We're finished with the worst record in this division.
Yeah, totally agree with that there. That's going to be a fun battle to watch. So we will see how it heats up. Let's rip through the AFC a little bit quicker here. I'll start at the AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens minus 170 favorites on DraftKings Sportsbook. Cincinnati Bengals right behind them at plus 280. Pittsburgh Steelers plus 500. And the Cleveland Browns bringing up the rear at plus 3,500. You know the saying, if you have 6 quarterbacks, you have 0 quarterbacks. It's sort of how things are playing out down there in Cleveland. But Sam Oshtry, do the Baltimore Ravens repeat as AFC North champions this year, or do you think it goes a different way?
I've had to talk myself out of the Steelers, which I hate doing because I've always trusted Rodgers and I trusted him going to his first year with the Jets, and obviously we never know how that plays out. And I trust him coming back from an Achilles injury, and that didn't work out. I think he showed flashes at the end of last season where I know you're not a Rodgers guy, but I really do think he improved last year, and it's so difficult at his age coming off of an Achilles injury where everyone should have expected, and I completely discounted this, but everyone should have expected him to have a really poor start to the season. And he wasn't good by any means. But now he's going to a good Pittsburgh situation with a great coach, a great culture, team that never misses the playoffs. You have DK Metcalf, a wide receiver, Robert Woods, Calvin Austin, a pretty decent receiving core for him. And then they went all in at defense with all these young guys these old guys that they brought in, like Darius Slade, that we know where they really went all in, and they still have TJ Watt. So that's going to be a great defense like it always is. It's a tough division because I don't want to discount the Ravens, who are obviously the favorite, or the Bengals even, who certainly improved at defense and already had one of the best offenses in the league in the last 10 games of the year. And we know Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So I don't you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to pick the Steelers. I think the Steelers are going to win the division. And I think I see a serious step back for the Ravens. But I think 3 teams in this division make the playoffs.
I didn't think you were going there. I'll start with saying I think the Baltimore Ravens 100% win this division this year. That I do think that they have by far the highest floor, the most sure thing for what they are. And Lamar Jackson should still be feeling the heat and the frustration for failing to get over his playoff shortcomings yet again last year. He should be feeling that pressure, and I get that nobody's going to care until you get to that moment once again, but you got to give yourself the best pathway possible, and that involves winning the division there. The Cincinnati Bengals popped a little bit more to me. I do think that this year they're going to feel the pressure from day one, that obviously they more or less out of their own control lost the playoffs last year as they played some really incredible football down the stretch, but they dug themselves quite a hole. I think there's going to be a clear focus on getting out of the gates early, winning some early games and putting themselves in a better spot. So I do have my eyes on them. I could see 3 teams making this because the Pittsburgh Steelers do deserve enough respect that they're going to be in the mix. The Mike Tomlin has provided that that's what you should expect from a year in and year out standpoint from them. But Aaron Rodgers, man, he's 67 years old. He's coming off the Achilles. And why should this year be better compared to these same reasons that you're laying out for why? He was bothered by the injury at this stage of his career.
Because I think it's a mental and physical thing when you're coming off an injury like that. I just think there's a hurdle you have to clear, and I think we kind of saw him clear it later in that year. And the first year is always going to be the most difficult because of those mental and physical limitations that you set on yourself coming off that injury. But after a full year of playing, I think that's when you could see him really make the next step in after the injury, going back to being a productive quarterback.
And I'm fact checking myself. He is not 67. He is 41 years old officially here. I guess I'm just backing my guy Father Time today. I'm just a Father Time believer because I'm fading the Aaron Rodgers outlook as well. But I do respect you taking a stance there. We'll keep it rolling with the AFC East. The largest divisional favorite across the entire NFL is the Buffalo Bills at minus 330 to win the AFC East there. The New England Patriots next up at plus 475. The Dolphins at plus 1,000. The New York Jets at plus 1,900 on DraftKings there. Does any team have a chance at knocking off the Buffalo Bills, or is this a clear path for Josh Allen once again?
Yeah, the Bills and Josh Allen are as dominant as a football team, and it feels like the Patriots run that they're on, and just in terms of the division and the dominance in that division over the last few seasons. Of course, not with the Super Bowl titles or playoff success that the Patriots went on, but there was a 20-year period where the Patriots owned that division, and it feels like the Bills are on that trajectory now. So I don't see any way the Bills don't win this division, but I have talked myself into the Patriots being a real threat. in this division. We know Mike Vrabel as a coach. Like he's a great coach. He's a great culture builder. Drake May was really impressive last year, and they surround him with what they did, especially trying to improve that offensive line, which was a huge area that the Patriots needed to improve. I think this Patriots team could give the Bills a run for their money and compete for a playoff spot. Certainly, they're going to increase their win total from last year, but I think they could seriously compete for a playoff spot. The Bills are just too good, so this is like the easiest divisional pick for me out of any team. But I do think the Patriots are a real threat.
Yeah, I think the Patriots will be competent, will be frisky, and will be in the mix here. That I do see things the same way as you. I'm really intrigued and kind of excited to watch this team this season. I do think Vrabel is the right guy moving forward. I do think Drake May could be the right guy moving forward, and that they did do a nice job filling in the rest of the roster around them. With all that being said here, I think there is no chance that the Bills lose this division, that there is as clear of a pathway as they could ask for. And I also note the Miami Dolphins are a team that I have on full-scale disaster watch, that I could see this season going entirely off the rails to the point where they win like 3, 4, or 5 games here. Like that's sort of how it feels things are trending to me for Miami. I could see a full clean house operation at the end of the year down there.
I was going to ask, like, are we just completely out on the Dolphins because nobody's
Yeah.
talking about them even as a playoff threat? I mean, they've essentially gone to irrelevancy, and I don't know if they necessarily deserve that based on the talent. Like when Tua is healthy, and we know the injury concerns and the head injuries and all of it. When he's healthy, he's an above average quarterback in this league. He's not a guy who's going to throw the ball down the field that much, but like he is a highly productive quarterback, especially when he gets the ball in Tyreek Hill's hand. Like Tyreek Hill is still potentially the best wide receiver in the entire NFL. It just maybe hasn't had the right situation or right quarterback the last few seasons, but he's that good. And Jalen Waddle, and like they have a good offense. Their defense still isn't great, but they have a good enough offense where they should compete. I do think you're right, where it does kind of feel like the culture is completely eroded there, and you could have a disastrous season where Mike McDaniel's out, and then you're looking at replacing Tua as a quarterback. And I think that we could trend in that direction just because of the erosion of the culture there and just the comments and everything with the Tyreek Hill situation and him throwing Tua under the bus, Tua throwing him under the bus, Tyreek Hill and his teammates. And now they weren't talking all off season and they had to work to repair those relationships. I mean, that stuff happens in the NFL, but it's also usually not that public. And this feels like it could spill over. And I don't think the culture is that strong there to begin with. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if it goes in the direction you are. But is everyone just out on them because they still have the offensive talent to be a really productive unit?
Yeah, and they did go 8-9 last year, which I think is better than sort of it is in some of our brains thinking back on it. They traded for
the 2 seasons before that, they were a
11-5. Yeah, or 11-6.
But not just like that people thought they could win the Super Bowl. And of course, they couldn't really play in cold weather at the end of the day. But people thought that those teams could win the Super Bowl because they were that talented.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. And even like they traded for Jalen Ramsey this offseason, which theoretically should improve them as well. I don't know. Like there's just a vibes thing that feels entirely off to me that I'm just not buying into the Dolphins here. Maybe this is not giving enough football credit to it, but that just is what my sense is on that overall roster there. So we'll move it down to the AFC South here. The Houston Texans at plus 110, the favorites to win the division. CJ Stroud and company. Jacksonville Jaguars, second in odds at plus 300. The Indianapolis Colts at plus 370. The Tennessee Titans at plus 650 here. Sam Oshtry, is CJ Stroud and the boys going to repeat and win the division once again, or do you have another feeling here?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the favorite here, and that's of course CJ Stroud and the Texans. And in terms of their wide receivers that CJ Stroud has, Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, I think that full offseason with those guys, or I mean that they were not that they weren't on team, but having those guys throughout training camp, as opposed to what they went through last year with their wide receiving core and how it was just eroded throughout the season, and CJ Stroud was losing weapons, it felt like every single week, and of course it really hurt his production. I think CJ Stroud gets back to being a really good NFL quarterback, like a top 10 guy, and this division just isn't that good to me. Like, at what point is Trevor Lawrence, the excuses are out the door? I don't care that you had a different play caller and different coach every single year. It's like you have to be what you were projected to be, which is a great quarterback and a franchise quarterback. And they paid him the contract. There's no pressure or behind that. Like, he has everything that he needs at this point. You have to show that you can will your team to the playoffs as a really, really productive quarterback, regardless of the situation, because everyone thought you would be immune to the situations as a quarterback, because very few quarterbacks are. Most quarterbacks have to go into great situations to be great quarterbacks. Everyone thought he was as great of a talent where he would be immune to that. That hasn't been the case so far. So I think this is a huge year for Trevor Lawrence, because you could be looking at a situation where maybe they're moving in a different direction if he doesn't make serious improvements as a quarterback, and that leads to serious improvements for the entire offense. But I could see that happening to a degree. I think the Texans are the best team, the best roster, the best coach, and the best quarterback. Give me the Texans.
Yeah, you're speaking my language with the Trevor Lawrence skepticism there, and I'm in full agreement. I really like the plus 105 odds for the Texans winning this division, to be honest. To compare that with like the Ravens, who are minus 170 there, I have far more doubts about the Bengals and Steelers looking over their shoulder than I feel with the Texans about the Jaguars and Colts there. The Colts, I think is crazy. They're even plus 370 here. Like Anthony Richardson, man, he will make a couple throws this year that keep you around thinking, what if? But he's just not the guy, man. Like the decision-making process, him taking himself out of a game last year, there's just no world where I think Anthony Richardson is able to stabilize himself.
What about Daniel Jones?
Yeah, Danny Dimes, man. Who
Okay.
knows? Maybe a new place, same face. I think it turns out a lot of the same. I think there's too many similarities in Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones for the Colts to feel any bit positive about that quarterback outlook there. So, yeah, I really like those plus 105 odds for the Texans to win the division. Let's wrap it up with the last division here, the AFC West, which is an interesting division here in football. The Kansas City Chiefs, the minus 120 favorite. We obviously know perennial Super Bowl contenders there. Denver Broncos have leaped to second in odds in the division at plus 275 there. The Los Angeles Chargers at plus 350 and the Las Vegas Raiders at plus 2,000. I think a bit of a tighter race than most would expect for a team like the Chiefs being in it. What are your thoughts there, Sam?
I'm going with the Chargers. I think the Chargers win this division, and this is obviously a massive upset that I'm going with. But I think the Super Bowl loser hangover is a real thing. And when you look at some
loser hangover,
yeah, not just the Super Bowl hangover, the Super Bowl loser hangover, and we've seen it the last two seasons with of course the Niners last year, whose season was just derailed by injuries, and the Eagles the year before that, who started out 10-1 and then lost 6 of their last 7 games. It's not just the physical toll of playing that late into the season; it's the mental toll of being and the emotional toll of being that close to winning a Super Bowl, that close to reaching the mountaintop and falling short. I think that's devastating for teams. And I think that's really, as much as you can say, like, we're moving on, we're turning the page onto the next chapter, it's really hard to do that. And I think that's why you see a lot of teams that lose the Super Bowl have really bad seasons the following year. And to give you some stats, like the last 10 Super Bowl losers have won 3.5 fewer regular season games the following season. Only one, the 2022 Bengals, had more victories in the next season. 4 of them, of those 10, including the Niners, missed the playoffs entirely, and just 2 made the conference championship the next season. The one that was really immune to it was the 2018 Patriots, and that was a historic dynasty with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. That's kind of what you're looking at with the Chiefs, so it wouldn't shock me if they're immune to it, and that's, of course, the counter to what I'm saying. But I just think the Super Bowl hangover is real in a really tough division, and I think the Broncos are going to be really good again. I like Bo Nix as a quarterback a lot, but I think this Chargers team is really good. And whatever you think about Justin Herbert, they found the right formula with him last year, where you rely on the running game. You don't make him a high volume passer. You want to turn him into a low volume passer. He's going to make the right reads. He didn't turn the ball over a ton at all last season.
Yeah,
excluding the playoffs. Excluding the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm not talking about one playoff game than the entire
correct.
season.
And I'm not going to defend the playoff resume, but when you're talking about a division winner, that has nothing to do with the playoffs. Sure. So as a regular season quarterback, Justin Herbert has proved that he can win you a lot of football games. That's whatever you think about him. That's just a fact. So
that is not a fact, sir. He's got barely above 500 career record.
Okay, but with John Harbaugh in the right system, he can win you a lot of playoff games. Let me switch that real quick. Yeah, he's not a guy who can carry the load, but he's a really productive quarterback in the right system when you're relying on a running game and making him into a low volume passer. Similar in a way to Jalen Hurts. So Jalen Hurts is a much different winner and clutch player, but turning him into a low volume passer with a great running game and a great offensive line and a great coach, he can win you a lot of regular season football games. I think they proved that last year. I think they're going to prove that again this year. And the Chiefs offense, the last point on it is the Chiefs defense has been great. They're going to continue to be great, but the Chiefs offense has been really average to below average the last 2 seasons. And people forget about that. And they got some great news over the weekend with Rashee Rice. I don't know how he got off, and his hearing's not until the end of really very weird. His hearing's not until the end of September. But it doesn't look like he'll be suspended at all, even past that hearing. So I don't know how he got off. They got off with all that. It seems like an Andy Reid production. Just get these guys who are in a ton of trouble, and you'll figure it out. Because they'll end up playing for you. And that's huge for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and that whole offense. But this offense has not been good. We know Travis Kelce is way past his prime, on the serious decline. Great podcast. That was a good podcast the other day. I don't know if you listened to it. But I mean, Jason Kelce took the mantle, obviously. But he's not the productive tight end that he was a few years ago. So I think this Chiefs offense is going to continue to be around average, league average. And they won a ton of games last year because of their defense, because of how clutch Mahomes was. I just think they're going to be really good. Don't get me wrong. They're going to win 11 to 13 games, but I think the Chargers can match that. I think the Chargers are going to have an awesome regular season.
Yeah, no coincidence that the less the Chargers have allowed Justin Herbert to throw the ball, the better that the team has gotten. And by
I'm
the
not
way,
disagreeing with that, but that's the right formula where he can win you a lot of games with that formula. I'm not disagreeing with that.
41 and 38 in his career, Justin Herbert, known winner, Justin Herbert there. So, yeah,
with Jim Harbaugh, it's different.
I think you would not be shocked to hear that I'm not buying any Chargers stock here. I do think that they will lock in comfortably in third in the division. Would not shock me if the Raiders give them a little bit of run for the money either. I do think that
you don't have them in the playoffs.
I do. I could see them sneaking into the playoffs as a wild card spot there. I'm rooting for that to be the case because I just can't wait to see what kind of playoff collapse that Herbert still has in the tank here. I think we should value as many of those as we can possibly get. This to me sort of feels like the 5+ fumbles season for Herbert when he does get to the playoff. We've seen the 28-0 blown victory. We've seen the 4 interceptions to a really poor defense there. I cannot wait to see how he one-ups himself as far as poor playoff performances go, but we'll wait till the time comes here. It is the Chiefs' division to lose, man. I've seen enough. They've really pushed the limits of whoever's around Patrick Mahomes. Like, it does not matter. He's going to make them a competent offense. I think the same thing happens this year. And I do think that the Broncos have a puncher's chance here. That I do believe in Bo Nix. That defense was the real deal last year. Led the league in sacks. Was really effective all over the field there. But I'm buying in that the Chiefs get the job done again.
I love Jim Harbaugh as a coach. And I think this is as much about coach as anything. And, of course, Andy Reid and Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh is probably the best coach division in the entire NFL.
Harbaugh better hold on to this job because he ain't going back to college, by the way.
Oh, definitely not. Are you kidding me? He slapped $20 million penalty on Michigan and said, I'm out of here. Yeah. But yeah, he's definitely not going back to college. He won them a national title, so it was worth it. Shout out Connor Stallions. He's not going back to college. I do think he's I don't care what level he's coaching at. He's an terrific football coach, and I think that plays a lot into this pick, where I trust him developing Justin Herbert, but I trust more than anything the system they've put around Justin Herbert, where he can be a low volume passer and be productive in that role. And we saw that last season. I think they make even jump this season. And I'm not going to defend the playoff stuff at all. And that's why you're right about a lot. I wouldn't say a lot. You're right about some of the Justin Herbert stuff, because the playoff stuff is indefensible. And if they get to the playoffs this year, I won't pick them with Justin Herbert as their quarterback. But this isn't about the playoffs. This is a regular season. Whoever wins the division wins it in the regular season. And I think the Chargers make another huge leap.
We will see. I'm not buying it whatsoever. I will continue rooting and betting against Justin Herbert on a week-by-week basis and believe that the pockets turn out all right on that one there. So any final thoughts? We did dive around the entire NFL. I'll wrap up with this question. At this very moment, at mid-August here, who's your Super Bowl prediction, Sam Oshtry? Throwing you on the spot.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth a bunch with it. Bills, Packers. I think the Bills win the Super Bowl this year. I want to say Bills, Eagles. I think it's really, really hard to get back. So unless you're the Chiefs and you have Patrick Mahomes. So I'm going Bills, Packers, and I think the Bills win the Super Bowl.
Eagles, Ravens. It's the year. Go Birds, baby. Yeah, that's my.
I could see all 4 of those teams being in the conference championship.
Yeah, definitely there. So,
and who wins it though? Who wins it?
Back to back. I'm backing. I think you just get to the dance and you got a chance there. I like the pathway to the NFC, to be honest. There's no team that I look around and directly scares me from an Eagles perspective. I'm out on the Lions, not like out, but I think they're going to really struggle with the coordinator issues here. There is not the top end team that I look at and say the Eagles are going to have a really hard time getting past this. Now, granted, anything can happen in the NFL. Anything can happen on any given week from a playoff setting, and we still got a lot of time before getting to that point. But I feel as good as I think we possibly could about the Eagles being back in contending.
I'm with you. Like, the Eagles are the best team in the NFC, no question. and it wouldn't shock me at all. And my heart says Eagles are going to be in the Super Bowl again. But my head says it is so hard to get back. You just don't see teams get back. And they're such a great roster with a great culture and a great quarterback, but the quarterback's not Patrick Mahomes, and injuries sometimes happen. And it's just hard to imagine a team getting back that doesn't have a Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady type. So my heart hopes that's the case, but my head says it'll be a different NFC team coming out. So I got Bills Packers.
Yeah, totally fair there. We will see what all goes down this NFL season. But me and Sam Oshtry are going to be all over things as well as everyone else right here on Fox Sports The Gambler. Sam, any final thoughts before we sign off for the day?
Nah, we're at week 0 in college football season this Saturday, and weekend after that is an awesome week 1 college football slate. So maybe we'll have to dive into some CFB, but football season's here.
Yeah, it has arrived, and we're going to be all over it right here on Fox Sports Gambler. So make sure you keep it locked to the dial here. Appreciate each one of you guys tuning in today. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and tweeting at us wherever you are listening there. So appreciate you guys for listening once again. We'll be back. Talk with you next time. Peace.